Hello friends, I am Misty. Today, I'm going to tell you the story of a little child becoming a famous thief with the help of these mischievous minions. So, let's begin the story. At the start of the movie, we see a villain named Belle. While escaping after stealing something, a group of police officers chases him. These officers are members of the anti-villain agency. Actually, Belle has stolen a map from a secret location. Evading the police, he quickly hides inside a studio. Belle is not alone. He has 5 other villains with him. The map Belle has stolen leads to the location of a very valuable stone. At this moment, the stone is hidden in a secret place in China. But this isn't just an ordinary stone. With it, anyone can transform into the most powerful being on Earth. Besides gaining immense power, the stone can also turn someone into various animals. Anyway, the leader of these villains is an old man named Wild. He takes on the primary responsibility of stealing the stone. Overcoming all kinds of traps, Wild manages to unlock a secret door. Upon entering, he encounters even more traps. However, he successfully steals the stone and makes his way out. But the stone was guarded by terrifying metallic guards. As soon as Wild steps out, the guards chase him. Just in time, his team rescues him with the help of a rope. But Belle betrays Wild, taking the stone from his hands and throwing Wild down. After that, everyone believes Wild is dead. The scene then shifts to a school where we see little Gru. In class, the teacher asks everyone what they want to be when they grow up. Gru answers that he wants to become the most fearsome villain in the world. He is also a big fan of Wild's group, the Vicious Six. In fact, he has already submitted an application to join this villain group. After school, while other kids' parents come to pick them up, 3 minions dressed as Gru's parents come to take him. Afterward, these 4 roam around the city causing all kinds of mischief. For instance, they use a gadget to empty an entire movie theater just so they can watch a movie in peace. Then, to avoid standing in a long line for ice cream, they create mischief and grab their ice cream ahead of everyone else. After all this mischief, they return home. Gru sees that his application has been accepted, and he has been called for an interview at the villain organization tomorrow. This news is a huge delight for Gru. He runs to share the news with his mother, but she remains indifferent to him. Feeling disappointed, Gru retreats to his secret room to share this exciting news with the minions. In the secret room, all the minions are busy with different tasks. But because of their mischief, all their work gets ruined. They all call Gru Mini-Boss. Although Gru doesn't like this name, he still shares his happiness with them. Since he has to attend the interview for the villain group tomorrow, Gru quickly goes to bed. At that moment, his 3 favorite minions come to sleep beside him. These 3 minions are named Kevin, Stuart, and Bob. Meanwhile, Belle announces news about the stone on television. He claims that in exactly 2 days, starting at midnight, the stone will become immensely powerful, making his group the strongest villain group in the world. Wild watches this broadcast too. This means Wild is not dead. Now, he has 2-3 bodybuilders with him who take care of all his tasks. The next morning, Gru gets ready to leave for his interview. As he steps outside, he sees his 3 minions already prepared and waiting for him. But Gru has to do this task alone. If he makes any mistakes, he won't get into the villain league. However, the minions are stubborn. Looking at their faces, Gru recalls how they began staying with him by putting on innocent expressions. Even then, Gru doesn't give in. He leaves them behind and heads out alone, but the 3 minions secretly follow him. Gru arrives at Belle's studio. He has been given a password to enter Belle's villain league, but he doesn't know how to use it. This studio happens to belong to a doctor, none other than Dr. Nefario. Upon seeing little Gru, Dr. Nefario helps him out a bit and gives him a gadget that allows him to pull any object from afar. With Nefario's help, Gru enters a cassette, says the password, and gets into a basement. At the front desk, several other villains are already waiting for their interviews. They all look extremely terrifying. Still, Gru tries to talk to them. But seeing such a small child, these villain candidates refuse to even acknowledge him. Shortly afterward, Gru's turn comes. Seeing Gru, Belle and his companions are stunned. They think a child has mistakenly entered the place. Gru repeatedly tries to explain himself, but no one takes him seriously. Meanwhile, the next candidate arrives. Gru wants to prove himself here by doing something that forces Belle to select him. So, using the gadget given by Dr. Nefario, Gru steals the stone placed behind Belle and flees. Immediately, alarms start blaring. As Gru tries to escape, Dr. Nefario once again helps him get out. Wherever Gru goes, the minions are never far behind. The 3 minions following him are waiting outside. Seeing them, Gru joins them, and together they start running away. Wild, who has been following all of this from a distance, begins chasing Gru. Soon, Gru spots another minion, Otto, nearby. Realizing they are surrounded, Gru quickly hands the stone to Otto and escapes, eventually returning home. Back at home, Gru excitedly narrates to the minions how he managed to steal the stone. Now, it's time to show them the stone. When Gru asks Otto for it, Otto hands him a doll stone instead. Seeing this, Gru becomes furious. When he questions Otto, the minion explains that while running away with the stone, he tripped and fell into the mud. While searching for the stone in the mud, it accidentally flew in front of a house. There was a birthday party happening in that house. A birthday boy received this stone doll as a gift from a friend. The boy instantly fell in love with it. So, Otto gave the boy the stone in exchange for the doll. But Otto cannot recall whose house it was, or at which birthday party this happened. Gru hears the story and becomes furious with all the minions, ordering them to leave his house. He makes it clear that after retrieving the stone, he doesn't want to see any of them in his home again. As Gru starts leaving, Kevin and Bob desperately try to join him, but Gru doesn't listen to them. Through the window, Kevin notices someone kidnapping Gru. It's Wild, who had followed Gru home to take the stone and ends up abducting him. However, when Gru sees his favorite villain, Wild, for the first time, instead of being scared, he becomes overjoyed. When Wild asks Gru about the stone, Gru shows him the fake stone that Otto gave him. Wild gets furious and begins to torture Gru. Eventually, Gru reveals the whole truth. Wild then brings him a phone and tells him to call home. If the stone isn't returned, Wild threatens to demand ransom from Gru's mother instead. Gru replies, "Don't even think about calling my mom. She'd probably pay you to keep me with you." Nevertheless, Gru calls home, and Kevin answers. Being a little clever, Kevin starts speaking in a confusing manner. Wild angrily warns him, "If you don't bring the money to San Francisco within 2 days, I'll kill Gru." Kevin rushes to tell all the minions, "We need to go to San Francisco with money to rescue Mini-Boss." Frustrated, they all corner Otto and demand to know where the stone actually is. Under pressure, Otto finally remembers. The minions even take a description of the boy from Otto and sketch his face to identify him. Otto and Kevin then head to the boy's house. When they question him, he explains that he gave the stone to his uncle, who is now wearing it as a necklace and has gone outside. Otto, waiting outside, sees the uncle with the stone around his neck and starts yelling, but the man doesn't notice. So, Otto takes a toy bicycle nearby and begins chasing him. Meanwhile, unable to find Otto, Kevin, Bob, and Stuart, decide to head to San Francisco to rescue Gru from being kidnapped. On the other hand, Bell and his team also set out to search for Gru. To get to San Francisco, Kevin and the others need to board a plane, but they don't have any money. Cleverly, they disguise themselves as pilots and manage to board for free. But just getting on the plane isn't enough. They decide to fly it themselves to San Francisco. These minions can't do anything properly. Yet, despite their chaotic flying, they manage to land the plane safely in San Francisco, with all the passengers intact. Meanwhile, Wild has trapped Gru in a deadly contraption. The trap is designed in such a way that if no one comes to rescue Gru within 48 hours, he will be torn to pieces. Otto, still chasing the uncle, ends up traveling a great distance. Kevin, Stuart, and Bob use a map to finally locate Wild's hideout. However, the place is heavily guarded. To avoid being caught, the trio tries to sneak in by hiding inside flower pots. But the guards spot them anyway, and as they try to escape, they end up in a colony. In the colony, a woman is working at her shop. Looking outside, she notices the villains beating up the three minions. The woman turns out to be a renowned kung fu master. Concerned about her customers' problems, she fearlessly beats up Wild's guards. Seeing her amazing kung fu style, the minions decide they should learn it too. After much pleading, the woman agrees, thinking of them as little children. But we all know how mischievous these minions can be. Meanwhile, at Gru's house, his mother was throwing a party with her friends, making the minions handle all the work. At that moment, Bell and his gang cut through the roof and make an entrance. Seeing Bell, the frightened minions reveal that Gru has been kidnapped by Wild. On the other hand, Kevin and his team had started kung fu training with the woman. However, whatever they were taught, they did the exact opposite. The harder the steps given to them, the more carelessly they executed them. Meanwhile, Wild's condition worsened, and all his guards abandoned him. Left with no choice, Wild frees Gru to help him with his work. Elsewhere, Otto had turned into a machine-like rider, pedaling his little toy bike non-stop. Finally, the uncle with the stone appeared, and seeing Otto's dedication, he gifted him the stone. Coincidentally, the man was headed to San Francisco and offered Otto a lift. Along the way, the two had lots of fun and laughter, eventually arriving in San Francisco. Back with Wild, he was making little Gru do all his chores. He assigned Gru to clean the swimming pool, which was filled with crocodiles. Unable to do it, Gru watched as Wild demonstrated, only to be grabbed by a crocodile and nearly swallowed whole. Gru had the chance to escape, but chose to save Wild from certain death. Wild was deeply impressed by Gru's bravery. Meanwhile, the kung fu master was still teaching Kevin and the others new techniques. However, she realized there was no point in training them since nothing could harm the minions. No matter what they faced, they were indestructible. Accepting defeat, she decided to give them honorary kung fu master badges. But before she could, the minions left without taking the badges. Wild asked Gru why he saved him instead of escaping, even though he had the chance. Gru replied that he had always been a fan and could never leave his favorite superstar to die. Impressed by Gru's passion for villainy, Wild decided to teach him how to be a successful thief. They headed to Evil Bank to rob it. As we know, this bank only funds villains. Wild pretended to have a heart attack, and during the commotion, Gru pickpocketed the manager's keys and stole something from the locker. Honestly, I thought he'd steal loads of money, but no. Gru stole the Mona Lisa. Wild was thrilled that Gru managed to steal the Mona Lisa despite the heavy security. Meanwhile, Kevin, Stuart, and Bob made a dramatic kung fu-style entrance into Wild's house, only to find it empty. Just then, Bell and his gang arrived and trashed the place. When Wild and Gru returned home and saw the destruction, Wild was devastated. Upset, he asked Gru to leave. Gru was on his way home when he ran into Otto, who had the stone. But before they could rejoice, Bell's team arrived, forcibly taking the stone from Gru. The police from the anti-villain organization also arrived. Unfortunately, the clock struck midnight, the time Bell had mentioned. Using the stone's power, Bell and his team transformed and began wreaking havoc. At this point, Wild and Kevin's team arrived. Wild told Bell, "Do whatever you want with me, but don't harm the kid." But Bell didn't listen. They tried to use the stone's power against the minions, but the opposite happened. Kevin, Stuart, and Bob gained incredible strength. With their kung fu training and the master's instructions, they fought so fiercely that Bell's team was utterly defeated. Gru had been tied to a clock, and as the hands moved, he was inching closer to death. But Otto managed to rescue him just in time. At one point, Bell and his gang were about to kill Gru, but the three minions let out such a loud scream that it sent Bell's team flying far away. The stone fell back into their hands, and Bell's powers vanished. Gru used the stone's power to turn Bell and his gang into tiny rats and restored the minions to their normal selves. Wild, who was in terrible condition, was taken into custody by the anti-villain police. As he was being led away, he told Gru, "We'll meet again very soon." In the next scene, Gru was seen holding a funeral for Wild. Gru was crying profusely, but then he saw Wild standing right in front of him. The minions had filled Wild's coffin with bananas instead of a body, so, while the world believed Wild was dead, he was actually alive. Gru asked, "How is this possible?" Wild replied, "It's the greatest suspense of my life. Even in death, I am alive." Finally, they loaded all the minions into a car and drove away. Later, Gru took the minions to Dr. Nefario because they needed his gadgets to pursue their villainous endeavors. Seeing the minions' innocent faces, Nefario couldn't refuse. They all climbed into Nefario's peculiar vehicle and drove off together. And with that, this incredibly funny and heartwarming movie came to an end.